Hey guys, it is the Comics Kid 2099, and by the time you hear this video, it has been a little bit over a week since Marvel started announcing a whole bunch of new concepts and series and stuff that they are going to be bringing to us in the near future. And I just wanted to do a little bit of a video kind of recapping some of the things I am most excited about. Now, if you've been keeping up with this channel at all in the past, you know that I am a gigantic X-Men fan. So, naturally, I am most excited about the news that concerns the X-Men. I have not been reading Battle for the Atom. Battle for the Atom has been a crossover between, I believe, 3 of the main X-Men books, and it's been going on for like 3 months. It's going to be a huge story that probably in a year or two, whenever I read it, I'm going to say, hey, they could have taken out like 4 issues of this thing. The whole crux of this story is that the original 5 teenage X-Men from the past were brought forward into the present day by adult Beast at the very beginning of Brian Michael Bendis' all-new X-Men. Now, in the Battle for the Atom story, a group of X-Men from the future have now come to the present day, and basically they're here to say, listen, you have to send the original 5 X-Men back to the past because their presence here is screwing up the future. And then it's a gigantic battle because some people are saying, yeah, they do need to go back. Some people are saying, no, let's let them stay. Now, like I said, I haven't been reading this story, but apparently, even though that story is not complete yet, we now know the outcome of it. Or at least we know that the original 5 X-Men are not going anywhere because we have now seen solicitations with all of them still staying in the present day. We will now be getting a storyline, a crossover between Brian Michael Bendis' all-new X-Men and Guardians of the Galaxy. This is going to be 3 months long, 3 issues in each of those titles. It's going to be titled The Trial of Jean Grey. And basically, teen Jean is going to be put on trial for the crimes that adult Jean committed when she was possessed by the Phoenix Force. I'm a little iffy on this for several reasons. One, it has been revealed like 30 years ago that Jean Grey was not responsible for the Phoenix. It was not only the Phoenix that did that, but Jean Grey was at the bottom of the ocean when all that happened. So I find it a little strange that they want to put her on trial, not only for that, but also Teen Jean didn't even do any of this. Now, I guess it's good that they are being fair here, because everyone and their mom doesn't trust teenage Cyclops for something that adult Cyclops has done, so I guess it's good that we're at least being fair here and we're treating everyone the same. I think it's going to be interesting to see the teenage X-Men kind of interacting with other people in the Marvel Universe, because I haven't read a whole lot from Marvel now. I've mostly just read 1 volume of Uncanny Avengers and 1 volume of All New X-Men, but everything that I've seen from solicitations and reviews from other people seems to suggest that the original 5 X-Men have basically stayed in the mansion. They haven't really left. They haven't really interacted with anyone other than adult versions of the X-Men. So I think it's going to be really neat to see these guys interacting with other superheroes who did not exist when they were teenagers in their original timeline. So I think that's going to be neat, and hopefully it's not going to be a ridiculously long story that could be told in like 3 issues and instead it's being told in 6 issues. I'm not extremely happy about the fact that it's a crossover, especially right off the heels of another big crossover. I feel like these people could tell their stories in the context of one series and they don't have to cross over with everyone else, but that's how they make their money, because if they didn't do this, then people like me, I would only buy the series that are good, and that means I would only be buying like 10% of what Marvel put out. So they make these crossovers so that I feel obligated to buy the bad series, and that's how they get me. Speaking of the new X-Men, or the old X-Men from the past, they now have new costumes. I have seen a lot of people say that they hate these costumes. Specifically, I saw a couple of people say that they looked like Power Ranger costumes. I don't see that. Part of it could be that the Power Rangers always had their faces obscured, and the Power Rangers always have more of a uniform look among their costumes. They might be different colors, naturally. The Blue Ranger's blue, Red Ranger's red, etc. But they always kind of had this uniform look each era. And with the X-Men, one, their original costumes were uniforms, black and yellow all across the board. And now people are complaining, I guess, because they've changed the colors, so they each have a different color for their costumes. But the picture I saw, they all kind of look a little bit different. And this, to me, feels like an updated version of their X-Factor costumes from the 80s, where they each had a slightly different look going on, different colors, but it was still sort of in the same vein of what they wore when they were teenagers, and I'm okay with that. I really liked Jean Grey's costume. I liked Angel's costume. They all look just different enough to work for me. And I mean, the X-Men have had wildly different costumes, different designed costumes since the 1970s. I don't know why people are making a big deal out of this. I was going to mention real quick that the X-Men remaining in the present day, I am somewhere in the middle of this. On the one hand, I don't think that this is an idea that can last very long. I think it's an interesting story idea temporarily. I think bringing the X-Men into the present day, that provides many different stories that you can tell. You can do a whole lot with every single adult X-Men and how they will react to these previous X-Men who came before them, who are teenagers now. That's really interesting. You can do a lot with that. The problem is, Brian Michael Bendis is stretching this out to a ridiculous level where nothing will happen in the span of 5 issues other than people talking to each other. And B, I feel like after a certain point it gets more annoying than interesting. Whenever you've had these X-Men in the present day for 3 or 4 years, people are going to be tapping their watches, waiting for these guys to go back home. And the problem comes when no matter what you do, the way that you tie this up is going to be anticlimactic. If the original X-Men get mind-wiped and sent back to the past, Charles Xavier is going to sense that they were mind-wiped. If they stay here forever, then that's going to change the timeline. We've seen that many times, even recently, that if you do something in the past, that changes the future. So no matter what happens, this is going to have an unsatisfactory ending. I already know that. So I really feel like these X-Men at this point have almost outstayed their welcome. I'm sure there's more that can be done. In fact, I was saying I'm pretty happy to see them interacting with the rest of the Marvel Universe, but at the same time, I don't want to see these guys stay so long that everyone is tired of seeing them. I would like, probably within the next year, I would like to see them go away. And if you want to keep the all-new X-Men title, you could just change the title to New X-Men, and you could let that be about the 18-year-old X-Men, like X23 or Pixie or Surge, those guys who used to have their own series. You could let this title be about them, because I really feel like there are plenty of new characters in the X-Men world that you can be focusing on without putting twice the focus on Cyclops, because you've got adult Cyclops and teen Cyclops, or twice the focus on Beast because you've got Beast in the Avengers and Teenage Beast here with the X-Men. I really feel like after a while that's going to get frustrating. It was announced that there is going to be a new X-Men series called Amazing X-Men, and apparently this is going to be about Wolverine traveling through hell to rescue Nightcrawler, who, spoiler alert, was killed in Second Coming. I feel like they announced this like half a year ago, that Wolverine was going to be going to hell to rescue Nightcrawler. I don't understand why this is suddenly news now. I guess that's why people aren't really talking about this. They're talking more about the other announcements, but honestly, I was really certain that I had seen something that said Wolverine is going to be rescuing Nightcrawler like over a year ago, maybe not over a year ago. I feel like it was in January. I feel like it was a long time ago that I saw this, and okay, I don't think anyone suspected that Nightcrawler would stay dead when they killed him in Second Coming. So I guess that's going to be, whatever it is. Also, this is a big spoiler, they had released an image of X23 making out with a dude who was silhouetted, and nobody knew who this dude was. Well, then apparently they either accidentally released the image, or they released it on purpose and they pretended like it was an accident, but they released the full image, and this is a huge spoiler, so if you don't like this, then just mute the video very briefly. Turns out X23 was making out with teenage Cyclops. Now this is one of those things I'm very excited about. It doesn't make any kind of sense at all. X23 has always been very reserved. She has never been the kind of person to make out with someone that she doesn't really know that well. She had trouble expressing her feelings to Julian, who she was dating. So I find it very strange that she's going to be making out with this guy. Technically, she does know adult Cyclops, but she really doesn't know him from 15 years ago. But at the same time, this is new and different. And I always prefer the X-Men when it is being new and different. I like it when they try new things, like All New X-Men, bringing the teenage X-Men to the present day. Even though I feel like that's almost overstayed its welcome. When they first started, I was very excited about that because it was new and different. And having teenage Cyclops and X23 making out, that provides all sorts of conflict that I cannot wait to see. Wolverine is going to hate teenage Cyclops even more than he already does, and I'm very curious to see if this is something just to ruffle Wolverine's feathers, or if this is something that both of them are into, or if one of them is into it and the other one is kind of like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm very curious about that, but I feel like it's not something that's going to last, nor is it something that, from a character point of view, makes a great deal of sense. But I'm interested to see what they do with that. Moving slightly away from the X-Men world, but still kind of keeping an eye on it, we've got a new XFactor series called All New XFactor. I'm surprised that they haven't also created Uncanny XFactor. That's a little bit of a joke. This XFactor's reboot will be written by Peter David, who has spent the last 8 years writing XFactor. I'm of mixed minds on this. On the one hand, I really enjoyed like the first 3 or 4 volumes of Peter David's XFactor run. I have not read the entire run. I have a little less than half of it in trade, and I've read even less of it in trade. But I really feel like after Messiah Complex, we get Darwin and Longshot on a team. I really feel like from that point on, Peter David was just kind of, he didn't really know what he wanted to do. He had a really fantastic concept. Mutant private investigators with a kind of noirish feel, and his sense of humor, his brand of storytelling worked really well with that concept. Then when he added Shatterstar, Longshot, and Darwin, it really didn't feel like the same thing. These guys felt much more sci-fi-y, much more out there. And I understand that everyone on the team was a mutant, but still, when you have gladiators from another dimension who are time travelers as well, that feels much more science fiction-y than it does mutant noir. And I really preferred the mutant noir direction, and also around that point when he added those new guys, I just felt like he was kind of coasting on his goodwill. I didn't feel like he was trying as hard as he was at the very beginning. So I feel like Peter David was kind of grasping at straws, maybe. I don't know if that's the right phrase here. He was definitely not at the top of his game with the last XFactor story that I read. Now, I guess it is possible that he eventually got better because there's still half of that series that I have not read, but everything that I've been hearing from other people suggests that that series was not as good as when it first started. So while I think it is strange that they are ending a series and then letting the same guy who is writing that series write the relaunch, I do think that this might light a fire under Peter David. He might get excited for this title once again. Hopefully, he's going to actually do some good stories once again, kind of like what we had in the first year or two of XFactor. I think that would be phenomenal. And also, the reason that he might get excited is this is kind of a brand new direction. This is not the pulp noir type direction, but if we're being honest, he really didn't work with that direction for like 8 years. So this is probably going to be a different thing, but it's probably going to be okay. I would say that Peter David is the kind of guy who he starts doing something and then he gets bored doing that, so he wants to do something different. And so taking XFactor and changing them from a mutant detective agency to a group of, I guess, bodyguards for this Google-type corporation, that's an interesting spin on things, and I'm very curious to see what he does with that. As for the characters, I don't really care about Polaris. I've always felt like she's very bland, and in the comics where she is featured, she's either written as a psychopath, like in Peter Milligan's run on X-Men, or I haven't read those comics because they're not collected, like a whole lot of the 1990s X-Factor. So I'm pretty neutral on Polaris. Gambit is going to be part of this group. I'm very curious about that. I wouldn't have pegged Peter David as someone who wanted to write Gambit, so I'm very curious if he is wanting to use Gambit or if Gambit was pushed on him and he said, okay. And then we've got Quicksilver, who I don't really care about either. There's other members of the team, but these are the only 3 that were confirmed. Now, if you Google around for all new X-Factor, you will see on the cover a character who looks very much like Doug Ramsey, Cypher, from the New Mutants. But they are saying that these are the only 3 characters who are confirmed, so this is either one of those things where they are only telling us 3 characters, but then they're releasing the cover at the same time, and that's telling us another character, and they're kind of being dumb about that. Or this is not Cypher, and it's someone who looks a lot like that, but is an entirely different character. I'm curious to see this series. I will eventually buy it because I am an X-Men completist, or as close to one as I can get. So we'll see if I get more excited for this or less excited. I think once the remaining members of the team are revealed, then I will see how excited I am. Moving completely away from the X-Men, I won't talk nearly as much about the rest of the announcements that I am aware of. 1. Neil Gaiman's Marvel Man series is going to be collected in trade. I could do an entire video talking about Marvel Man, so I won't talk about that now. If you're curious, Google Marvel Man or Miracle Man, either one of those, and you could read for an hour about what all went on with that character. But basically, this character had his own comic book series in the 80s, written by Alan Moore and then later written by Neil Gaiman, and then it was canceled, and the rights of the character were basically very, very sketchy, and so people like me, I did not start reading comics until the early 2000s, we never got a chance to see this character, and so I'm very, very excited to be able to read what I have heard to be a very seminal run in comic book history, not just a seminal run in a particular character's history, although it is that, but just comics as a whole were changed by this character and the work that Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman did on this character. Now, all the announcements that I was seeing were saying that Neil Gaiman's run was being collected. I was not seeing anything suggesting that Alan Moore's run was being collected, except for on the Comics Should Be Good website, blog site thing, Tom Brevoort apparently contacted the head of that blog and said, yeah, Alan Moore's run will be collected. So if they collect both of those runs, I will be super happy. I think this is the final major work of comic bookdom from the past that I was really interested in reading that for whatever reason I could not read. I think after Flex Mentallo, this was the big thing I was looking to read some point in my life, and now I will get to, so that's really exciting. Moving into the actual Marvel Universe, it looks like Carol Danvers will be getting her own new series. I think they're going to be canceling the current series that she has, and she will have another series. So I don't really understand why they're canceling that series. It hasn't been around that long. From what I understand, a lot of people really liked it. I had seen several rave reviews for that series, but apparently she's going to have a new artist on this series, and the same writer, I think Kelly Sue DeConnick, will be writing this current new series. So that'll be something to look forward to if you're a fan of that character. It looks like we're going to be getting a brand new Ghost Rider character, and instead of riding a motorcycle, he rides a car. This is one of the stupidest things I have ever heard in my life. I understand that the character's name is Ghost Rider, so it implies that he rides something. But apparently in Jason Aaron's run on Ghost Rider several years ago, he had this idea that some Ghost Riders ride other things, like one rider rides a caravan and one rider rides an elephant, and this guy rides a car. And to me, this is extremely stupid. When Robot Chicken has beat you to the punch on a joke like this, they did a skit where Ghost Rider was riding a Segway in a park. When they've done something as stupid as you are now doing, and they did it years before you, you should probably just not even do it at all. I think Ghost Rider is just fine on a motorcycle, or you can just do a demon-human hybrid who doesn't ride anything. I would be fine with that. I don't see this new Ghost Rider character lasting very long. I feel like this is going to be very similar to how Ryan Choi, the second Atom, kind of went away after people were like, yeah, we want Ray Palmer back. Or how Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern, kind of went away when people were like, yeah, we want Hal Jordan back, etc. Anytime you try and replace an air quotes classic character with a newer character, it really doesn't ever work. I would much rather they take this guy, do a supernatural demon story, but don't call him Ghost Rider. And I know people aren't going to buy the title if it's not a Marvel Comics title with a, well-known title, but that's it's a fine line to walk. And I feel like right now they are going to give us this guy for about 5 years. We're going to have this guy either in the foreground or in the background, and then we're never going to hear about this guy again. And that is about everything. There's one more announcement, and I forgot to mention this with the rest of the X-Men news, but there is going to be a sequel to the somewhat well-known, pretty well-received story, Wolverine Origin. This is the first Wolverine origin story, not to be confused with the ongoing series Wolverine Origins, but the story that started it all off, the one with Rose and James Howlett and all that. There's going to be a sequel written by Kieran Gillen and drawn by one of the Kubert brothers. I don't remember which Kubert brother is going to be drawing it. Whichever one drew the first Origin miniseries, the other brother is going to be drawing this one. And I'm not really excited about this. From what I've seen, what little I have seen of Kieran Gillen's work, I'm not a huge fan, and I don't really feel like we needed this story. This is basically going to be set shortly before World War I, so it's a few years after the end of the first miniseries. I just don't see how this is a story that we really, air quotes, needed to hear. It could be enjoyable, I guess, but it just seems like at this point, Marvel, they realize that Wolverine sells well. They realize that when they say what you knew before did not really happen, that sells well, so they try to do that with a character that sells well. The problem is, ever since House of M, Wolverine has known everything about his past. No longer is there any gaps in his memory like there was for the entire character's history. So I don't really see how this is going to work on a story level. Are we suddenly going to hear, oh, there's suddenly this new bit of information that I know about my life that I didn't know ever since House of M? Are we going to get that? Also, spoiler, it seems that Mr. Sinister is going to be in this story. That's okay. I guess it's nice that we're tying Mr. Sinister to Wolverine, except that one of the things I loved about the Origin miniseries was that it was not tied to the Marvel Universe. We did not have Apocalypse showing up and shaping Wolverine when he was a boy. And I don't really feel like we need Sinister shaping Wolverine when he's a young man. I just don't feel like that's going to feel very timeless. The Origin miniseries was timeless because anyone could pick it up and read it and they can enjoy it. This, anyone can pick it up, sure, and they're going to have this mad scientist guy named Nathaniel Essex, and technically they don't have to know that his name is Sinister, but at the same time, why not just do a different story? Why not just do something new? Why do you have to tie this to the history of the Marvel Universe? Yeah, I'm not really excited about this. It could be okay, but I feel like if you want a Wolverine origin story that is set after Origin, why don't you go read Brian K. Vaughan's Logan? That wasn't an absolutely mind-blowing story, but it was pretty enjoyable. It was very fun to read, and I feel like that in spirit works better as a sequel to Origin than this is going to. I just don't feel like picking up right where Origin left off is something that we really needed. Maybe people are going to hate me for saying that, but I don't feel like this is a story that people are going to be talking about like they did Origin 13 years ago. So that is everything that I am aware of. I'm sure there were some other announcements, but I've been talking for almost half an hour on my end. I probably am going to edit out some of this where I stumbled over my words, so it will seem a little shorter to you guys. But let me know in the comments what you guys thought of all the news. What was your favorite announcement? What are you most excited for? What did you hate about these announcements? What are you least excited for? Let me know in the comments below, and I will be back to you guys tomorrow with a different kind of video. So until then, I'll catch you guys later. Have a great day.